It's time for a liturgical listening party where we introduce you to a brand new piece of sacred music.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. I'm David here with Stephanie.
Hey, David. Thanks for joining us. For everyone listening today, this is going to be our liturgical listening party segment. So we are going to have a score. We're just going to talk about one featured piece of music. David and I will tell you where to get it. We'll describe it, give you a little bit of an overview, and then we'll just talk about what makes this score so special. Sound good?
Sound good.
So what do we have on the menu today, David?
We have Bradley Sowash and his arrangement of Amazing Grace. Yeah, piano solo, instrumental, so good.
Well, I mean, what's amazing about it, it's in theme and variations form. So it starts out with the melody that we all know and love, and then it just expands into these other sound worlds.
Yeah, totally. I really appreciate it because it's that melody line that we all know, like we all know the tune, but in listening to it, it's like you get a glimpse of Bradley's heart through the expression of Amazing Grace. It's like Amazing Grace was translated through the heart of Bradley Sowash and just came out in this like beautiful piece.
Well, and we're going to talk about why that is in just a moment. Where can our listeners find this piece?
Oh, they can go to Bradley Sowash's website, bradleysowash.com, BradleySowash.com. You click shop, and then piano solos, intermediate to advanced, sacred music.
Beautiful. So I'm a few clicks away from experiencing this piece myself.
100%.
And it looks like on the website too, there's an MP3 sample. So you can't listen to the whole thing before purchasing, but you can get a taste of what we're talking about as we're doing this. So I hope everyone gets that chance. Just to go back to your point about us getting this beautiful glimpse into Bradley's soul through the medium of Amazing Grace, it makes me think of Bradley's point during our conversation when we talked to him in the previous episode. He mentioned certain melodies being anointed. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those anointed melodies.
Well, 100%. I mean, I feel like everyone knows Amazing Grace, regardless of what faith they're in, like regardless of what walk of life people are in. I feel like everyone knows the tune Amazing Grace, you know?
1000%. And I mean, it's so distinctive. You know, everyone knows Amazing Grace from such a young age, and you can't mistake any other melody for it. And so, you know, when an arranger takes hold of that, it gives that arranger freedom to really put an original spin on it while trusting that their audience can follow along and that their audience can still participate even through that originality.
Yeah, 100%. I love that.
One other thing Bradley mentioned to us was that this arrangement is often used for funerals and memorials and celebrations of life. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because these variations, the wide swath of music that you're going to hear, it really encompasses the complexity of all human life, right?
100%. And I also think it speaks to, like you said, the anointedness. Is that right? Of the tune, right? Like in these big moments of people's lives, like it's very easy to just run back to something that you know. You know who I think of? I think of like the people who have been part of the church and then have like walked away or like haven't been to church in a long time. A tune like Amazing Grace it like strikes a chord with them because it brings them back. Because like you said, like we all know this song from childhood. So it's one of those songs that can function as like a harbor of safety for people who are trying to even come back to the church.
Oh my God.
In these moments where like I haven't been in church for forever and I have to go to a funeral, like it's comforting to have a song like, oh, I know this song, and then they can, you know, participate in the liturgy in that way, in that sense, with something comfortable.
I just love harbor of safety because that's the whole story of Amazing Grace, right? Is that, like you find this throughout all of the tempestuousness of life.
Yeah, and like the whole 100%. And it's like, regardless of where you are and how worthy you feel, right? Like, that's why the grace is amazing. It's given freely. And like, wherever you are in life, there's no worthiness that you have to achieve to receive Amazing Grace.
You're amazing with words. Why aren't you the full host of this show?
Stop.
Well, with that, let's get down to brass tacks. Let's start at the beginning of the music. What is going on at the start?
So at the start, what I really loved was that it's the melody that we all know, like Amazing Grace, and it's literally the melody of the first words of the song, Amazing Grace, and it's just that melody by itself So, but there's no accompaniment at all. It's like that first phrase that everyone knows, quote unquote, a cappella. Like no instrumentation, no accompaniment. It's the whole piece starts with that melody. It like establishes, like, to the listener who may have just even stumbled upon the piece, when they hear that, they're like, oh, it's Amazing Grace. So it like establishes the world that we're about to step in.
Well, it is. So measures 1 through 16 are our theme. It's the Amazing Grace melody. And the way Bradley sets this, it's, a melody in the right hand and this very thin counter melody in the left hand. So it's this like note for note counterpoint. There's never more than two voices at once. And it's almost like a little bit thrillingly dangerous for the pianist because it can feel so exposed and so vulnerable.
Yeah.
You don't even have a lot of pedal to cover you, so your fingers have to be very precise here. And yet, throughout all of that vulnerability, there's a clarity.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because what's happening is, like, the melody, your right hand is just going to play that simple melody of Amazing Grace. And then to me, it feels like the left hand is like, I like that you said dangerous, because it feels like the left hand is like a tightrope artist who's just playing on the tightrope. The rope is the melody. So it's like the tightrope is a melody, and like the left hand that's dancing is like the tightrope artist on that melody, and it's just dancing around it. And like dancing in the spaces, the empty spaces of the melody, like wherever there's a space between phrases, like the left hand is like just jumping in and dancing. It's really cool because like in the dancing that's happening with the left hand, it's like accentuating the simplicity of the melody that we all know. It's in that counterpoint that the simple melody that we know is being emphasized, even though there's like whimsical stuff happening with the left hand, It's cool. It's a cool, like a really cool section.
Whimsical is the perfect word for it because it's this very energetic little scalar counter melody. So your fingers are, your left hand fingers are just running up and down the keyboard. It's so delicate, but so free.
I like it.
But then all good things come to an end, right? So we hit the end of the theme and we get to this section that Bradley labels hymn-like in measures 17 through 31. So what's going on in that section, David?
Well, the first thing that struck me when we hit the section is like it automatically starts with like the relative minor. We've been in G, right? The key G, and then to have the first chord be an E minor, it hits you right away like, oh, it's familiar, but now it's reharmed. Like there's like reharmonization. So now, even though it's familiar, we get that sense of, oh, now it's starting to change. Like now we're getting where Bradley is going to start playing with this melody, and we're going to get a glimpse of like how he wants to express it.
That reharmonization is so important because, like David, like you said, it's this minor feel to it, and yet without getting too technical in music theory, what's going on? It's a bunch of seventh chords. We in Western music are used to 3-note chords, triads, but seventh chords have 4 notes into them, so we've extended the chord. And what's interesting about what Bradley's doing here is it almost feels like he's extending the chord downward by adding a third at the bottom of the chord rather than extending it upward where jazz musicians normally extend. We normally add notes on the top of the chord, and Bradley's placing another note a third below, which turns G major into a minor. So it's like the notes that we expect are there and the harmony that we would expect is there, but there's this other note, this, fourth note that always sits below the chord that completely changes the feel of it. That is a little jazzy, a little minor, and completely different from what we would think.
The reason why I love sevenths, I didn't start getting into like jazzy seventh, like major seventh, minor seventh chords until later in my piano playing. But once I got into them, like the quote unquote meat that they can bring into like your playing, the meat that it can bring to a listener, it just provides like an extra texture, right? Like, let's say you're like, imagine eating like a bowl of ramen and it's just noodles. Seventh chords are like, now I'm throwing like meat in the ramen, and now there's like green onion so that you get that flavor and like the slight crunch of the green onion in there, and there's pickled bamboo shoots in the ramen, and like so now you're getting all these textures and like you have more to chew on, quote unquote, as both the piano player and the listener. So all those sevens are in this section. And then another thing that I noticed was like the contrast between the first section and on this section. The first section being so simple with that counterpoint, right, with the melody in the right, and then like the dancing acrobat in the left, I like to call it. And then in this second section, it's like Bradley just allows those textured, meaty chords to just breathe. There's very minimal fills. So like in the phrases of the melody that we all know, there were no instrumental fills. Bradley just let those chords ring, let all that meat just sit before the next phrase comes in. And it's a really cool contrast to the beginning of the song, which is so playful and whimsical. Contrast brings out the best of both sides, right? With the contrast of this happening, like you remember the first section, you're like, oh yeah, the first section was so whatever. And then with that first section being so playful, when this section hits, because it's so different, it hits the listener even harder. So it's cool.
I love that. And just to kind of home in on 2 points that you made about texture and fills. Throughout this section, it's always the 4-voice texture. And congregations, people who do hymns, we know 4-part harmony, right? But these like 7th chords are so not the harmony you would normally put your 4 voices on. So what Bradley shared with us about this section, he mentioned that it kind of evokes 4-voice shape note singing, which if you're not familiar with that tradition, it is a traditional type of hymnody. Today, prominent mostly in the South, although it originated way back in England a few centuries ago. But the point being, it's a very distinct style of music making, and it's a very democratic style of music making where each of the voices is equal, each of the voices contributes to the harmony, and really what you care about is the harmony as a whole. And then to your point about fills, in the middle of all these glorious 7th chords, we have this moment in measure 23. So if you're like singing or thinking of it in terms of the text, it would be the like me part of Saved a Wretch Like Me. At that moment in measure 23, Bradley actually pulls away the 7th chord, gives us a very, very solid, dominant 5 chord that we would expect in that moment. And then in the left hand, he embellishes it with this scalar motion where he's gradually lifting and lifting and lifting us up through that measure. Earth falls away from under you, and then this scale just swoops in and lifts you. It's just
so good.
So there's our hymn-like section. In measures 32 through 67, we've got a loose and jazzy section. Very different here. What's going on with loose and jazzy, David?
So this section is like so different than the first two. Like it starts off right away with the left hand, establishing like the feel, like the different feel that Bradley wanted to establish. Language is fun. I call it the toe tapper section because like it's a part of the piece where it's easy to start tapping your feet. I really like how he intros this section with that feel in his left. It stays throughout the whole section. It's like and it stays like the entire section. It's so cool. And then like you'll hear him play over that feel in his own way, but because it's so familiar, as he's like riffing around this melody, even if he's not playing the melody per se, we all know what part of Amazing Grace, we all know what part of the melody line that he's on. Internally, we're hearing Amazing Grace, but on top of that internal melody that we're hearing, he's playing something different. So it's almost like he's accompanying and embellishing on the melody, while internally, like, we're singing Amazing Grace.
In the hymn-like section, we had that freedom to reharmonize, and now it's like we're taking even more steps towards independence and freedom by putting this whole groove in there.
Yeah.
To be clear for listeners, this loose and jazzy section is in 9/8. So we have a time signature change there, and it's just surprising in the most welcome and best way possible.
Yeah.
The whole section is underpinned by this same groove in the left hand. But even though the left hand is maintaining this groove, this consistency, and giving us this solid foundation, it's such a rhythmically difficult section because the right hand is like almost never playing the same rhythm twice. It just gets to, again, freely play with the melody that we know in these crazily inventive rhythms. In the right hand, you have these like almost constant tremolos that make it even more dramatic and full of movement, and you just feel like you're being shot forward on a rocket. But at the same time, there's this slower harmonic rhythm, so we're not changing chords as often. Right? Like in the hymn-like section, we were Bradley was moving from chord to chord once or twice a measure. And here in this loose and jazzy section, we're staying on the same chord for a few measures at a time. So we're kind of like sitting back and savoring each harmony. We're not moving from harmony to harmony. It's completely the rhythm that is pushing us. The rhythm, including the grace notes and bent pitches, it's very evocative of blues and jazz piano playing. You see a lot of B flats in there just to give us that like gorgeous flat third that Billie Holiday makes sound so good. And there's this satisfying concordance of the rhythmic style and the scalar mode. So this like blues scale along with these jazz rhythms, it's just,
And it's cool because it's like, if I were to think, I have all these weird analogies today. If this piece were a sandwich and like we're a toothpick going through the sandwich from like the top to the bottom, this is like the fun condiments and toppings that you put on top of your meat, right? Because like we're going through the sandwich from the top to the bottom. So like if we go through the bread, like the bread on top.
That's our theme.
That's our theme. That was the intro into like the
hymn-like.
Yeah, the hymn-like stuff is like some of the condiments and stuff. And then like this fun part is like the fun like pickles and like cool stuff that you put, I don't know, you put lettuce, tomato, pickles, like all the fun veggies that you put on top of the meat before we get into the meat. I feel like the next section is the meat of it all. Let's get into the next section.
So if that was the spicy Dijon, I just love how much food we're talking about.
Right? Can you tell listeners that it's almost dinner time for us?
So if that was the spicy Dijon, I feel like our next section, it's this heavy gospel style section in measures 68 through 137. This is just so it's filling and it's solid.
Yeah, this is a section that took it for me. Like this is a section that I listened to like so many times over and over. So this section I feel is divided into two sections, right? Like there's the obvious like gospel feel that starts with like those heavy walking bass notes into like the gospel right hand and stuff, the gospel chords on the right, but it doesn't stay there for too long. Like I feel like Bradley stays there for a little bit and then all of a sudden it mellows out while still sort of keeping the gospel feel, and then it goes into this like free flow section that to me is like the heart of this entire piece. Like to me it's the prayer part of the piece. If you all have listened to the interview that we had with Bradley Sawash, like we talk about what Bradley calls foo-foo. Like we got into some foo-foo conversation, like about just music in general and like where music comes from. And in that interview, like I mentioned that I like to think that music already exists and that as musicians, all we are just antennas that pick up on these waves of music that we already live in. And like I feel that the second section of this gospel section is where Bradley just opens up his antennas and just plays like freely on whatever he feels. Like sure, I feel like it's transposed. Like when you listen to the song, what you hear is what's transcribed on the piece. But I honestly believe that at this point, what it feels like to me is Bradley was just like, I'm just gonna play. And like he just plays for a good 30 measures where it just feels like it's free form, and I am in love with this section. If I were a piano player and I were to hit this section, I marked measures 84 to 116, I would do this. And Bradley said that I could. In our interview, Bradley said if piano players can hear something else or they want to add something else, that they're I don't know, Bradley, you can correct me, email me if I'm wrong, but the reason why he put the chords above the measures were so that these piano players and all of us could express ourselves in our own way on these parts. So like from measure 84 to 116, I feel like if I were playing this piece, I would just close my eyes and just play whatever comes, given the chords that Bradley is given. Given the chords and given the rhythms that Bradley's given, like I would just play whatever. And this section is what resonated with me. I'm gonna cry. That section is the part that resonated with me the most, because it's like, there's a point as both a musician and a piano player where music becomes communication without words. And so in this section, from 84 to 116, because I'm a piano player, and I've been playing piano for like a long time, I can feel his fingers on the keys. And because of that, I understand his heart at that moment. And it's cool because it's not just his heart, but through the medium of Amazing Grace, it's like I feel God's heart through the Spirit of his piano playing. So it's like a unique translation of God's spirit through this amazing composer who speaks the same piano language that I do. Because in that section is the section that I feel like my own style of piano playing. I feel it the most. Like that's the way that I also play. So I can't help but get emotional when I talk about that part because it's like I like understand you. You know what I mean? Like I understand where he's coming from and like what he's quote unquote saying. It was really cool. It's like the most prayer-like part of the whole piece to me.
This is everything that we work for. This is everything we strive and toil for. It doesn't always have to be tears. It can be laughter. It can be any kind of emotional response, but we are living in the spirit together. Like basic ecclesiology, right? Like we're all part of the body of Christ and we're united in him.
Yeah.
Music does that.
Yeah.
Music is such a gift.
I loved that part so much. If you couldn't tell,
the word I keep coming back to is freedom, right? And it's just another form of freedom that he gives us in this heavy gospel style section. We go from the key of G to the key of D, so you're up a fifth. You're gaining energy. It just takes you to this whole other plane. In terms of the tessitura, we're playing in a lower tessitura, so we're playing in a lower range, lower notes. And there's something that, like, I don't know, it just feels like you're so deeply grounded in this section. Again, being free. You can be free because you have this solid foundation. And we pick up the harmonic rhythm here. So, you're back to about one chord per measure, and it's like you're running through this field on the brightest, sunniest day possible, and you are just completely unhindered.
It's definitely the meat of the sandwich for me.
It's the longest section of the piece, so for good reason, right? There's just a lot going on here.
And then all of a sudden, like, after all of that, like, prayer, freestyle section in music where he's just going on the chords, it, like, melts back into the melody, and you're like, right. This is Amazing Grace. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I was listening to Amazing Grace.
He does in measure 68 through 82. We have that like very straightforward statement. But then within just a very few short measures, by measure 77, the quote unquote soloist emerges from that texture. And we get these free-flowing melismatic embellishments. It's just so ornate. We start out paraphrasing. I keep saying we. This is all Bradley's amazing work. I have nothing to do with this, dear listeners. We start out hearing this ornate paraphrase of Amazing Grace, but like David mentioned, you just go into this moment where Bradley is free and creating and original. And he does it, I love the word melt, because the way he transitions into that free section, it's a borrowed minor 4 chord in measure 79. So in the middle of this major key, we have a borrowed minor chord. And even then throughout that measure, we have this like crossed B flat, B natural voice. So there's this like moment of ambiguity, this moment of I'm slipping into something else. The veil is lifting and I'm transitioning to another, I don't know. The borrowed minor chord is just this moment of the veil lifting and you passing through this gauzy transition from one way of living to another, right? Even after when we're ending this kind of free-flowing exploration, I guess is the word I'd use. In measure 135, that borrowed 4 chord returns, and that's how Bradley gets us back into the melody again. So it's like we have this excursion away from the melody where we have this pure moment of Bradley's voice. And eventually through that minor 4 chord, he brings us all back home again.
And then it goes into like this, the whole ending, right?
Let's talk about that ending.
It's wild.
Really, we have a brief transition in measures 138 to 141. And then the whole end of the piece is just this very brief but impactful tag, measures 142 to 147.
When I was listening, it's like Amazing Grace, but then like he does this super cleverly written thing where he combines the phrases, was blind but now I see, with and saved a wretch like me. Like he combines those two phrases to keep that phrase like rolling. It turns almost like into a loop. And then like on some of the loops, like it changes keys. It's really cool.
It's almost like having a fade out on an album. And the thing with fade outs on albums is that it implies there's still something going on, right? It implies that the music never really stops. stops.
It's like super cleverly written because it starts like I said, like it'll alternate between those two phrases, but then like it'll start jumping keys and it'll take you into the next key without you realizing that you've switched keys. The thing that represents for me, like what I took away from this ending is that like it almost has you forget, like as a piece is ending, it has you forgetting what key you started in. To me, it was a message of like this amazing grace that we are experiencing both in this music and in life. Like it's for everybody. It's for quote unquote all the keys. Like if we're all musicians and we're all part of music, if we were all keys or whatever, if there were an endless amount of keys in which God is playing and we are the expressions of God's love in all these different keys, me forgetting what key this piece is in sent the message to me that grace that God gives is for everybody in all keys, quote unquote. It was a really obviously impactful ending on me.
So yeah, this is the most tonally unstable, the transition in 138 to 141. It's the most tonally unstable part of the piece, but for that very reason, it's kind of one of the most interesting parts. It's almost a circle of fifths progression in that the roots of the chords descend by fifth, and then by fifth, and then by fifth. But we're talking about these extended chords in shifting inversions. So it's not just 5 to 1, 5 to 1, 5 to 1, 5 to 1 all the time. It's, in measure 138, you have this A flat major 7 that's arpeggiated through a few octaves. In 139, you have these, hints of slipping into G minor. But then in 140, we're definitely in D flat major 7 at that point, which then, again, like in the category of extended chords that you don't expect, this D flat major 7 kind of functions as a Neapolitan 7 chord, and then we resolve to C. But the interesting thing about that is Neapolitan chords are predominant. They're like a 4 chord, right? So the fact that we go from a Neapolitan to C is almost like going 4 to 1, which is the amen cadence, the plagal cadence that you would normally do at the end of a hymn, right? So in this transition, you almost have like an amen moment, only it's a Neapolitan 1. So it's like totally not what you'd expect.
That's awesome.
Which then it takes us into this tag that's in C, but it's also ambiguous because it's an open fifth. So you don't have that third to define the mode anymore. It's just this, again, wide open, free sound, this perfect open fifth. It's the fade out. It's the loop that keeps going. So, I mean, that's a journey, right?
Yeah, totally, 100%. It's worth the listen, and it's worth if you're going to pick it up and like play it.
I mean, I'm a clarinet player, so I just get to sit back and watch you keyboardists do the hard work.
Oh yeah, totally.
But yeah, for all of you pianists or piano adjacent people out there, if you're interested in this, if you had fun going on that journey with us, go check out bradleysowash.com, go to the shop tab, then pick piano solos, intermediate to advanced, and sacred, and that'll take you to Amazing Grace.
All right. Well, there you have it. There's the breakdown of Amazing Grace, arranged by Bradley Sowash. Thank you all for listening and going on this roller coaster of a journey with us. We look forward to the next time that you can join us as we continue
on our journey.